Yes. Yes, I am excited about this fight. Please let me know if this mic is working. I apologize. I've got the full nightclub promoter collar open, but it is hot as shit here in Toronto. But please let me know if you can hear this. Kamaru Usman defends. This is an iced coffee. We're going to get right into it. Kamaru Usman defends his UFC welterweight title against game-bred Jorge Masvidal. Yes, we know this. Jorge took it on a week's notice, had 22 pounds to cut. We get distracted by a lot of these things. They are important, but they're certainly not everything. Yes, sir, we can hear you. Great, thank you. So 22 pounds, let's get that out of the way quick. That's not a lot of weight to cut for a welterweight fighter, especially a very experienced one. So that's not a lot. Last minute, that matters. Why does that matter? We'll get into that. A couple things I want to discuss. Jorge and Kamaru, super cool fight. Awesome fight. A lot of fun. Tactically, strategically, technically, emotionally, story. It's got everything. I want to look a little bit at the tactics and a little bit at the strategy. Okay, quickly. What is a tactic and what is strategy? Strategy typically is the destination we're trying to get to, and then how we're going to get there. And tactics are the specific things we'll do along the way to achieve that. I got a quote here, so stick with me. Also, quickly, this is what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to tell you this guy should do this guy's good at this, if this guy does this, he's going to win, if this guy does this. That's just for television. We're not on television. We're streaming. We have time. There's nobody going to cut to camera 2, quickly say in my ear, throw a tag on it. That's why that happens. Those aren't the conversations that coaches have and fighters have and experienced people have when they're sitting around discussing these fights. That's just for TV. Quickly, there is the language of martial arts and then the language of sports television. The language of sports television is fun to do on TV, but it's not based in the most truth. It's based in entertaining, creating conflict, creating controversy, creating debate. That's why that happens. So don't get too stuck on that. And you will learn a lot more about martial arts and you'll enjoy it a lot more. We don't have to talk like broadcasters. In fact, they don't even have to talk like broadcasters, but that's a story for another day. I do that job. I do it often. I love it. And sometimes I find myself talking that way just because that's what we do. And that's what those that came before us did. Strategy and tactics. Okay, I got a quote from Sun Tzu here in The Art of War. Strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. It's very interesting. Of course, The Art of War is the analysis of the storytelling of the sort of rules and structures and philosophies of battle, of war, of conflict. They apply not only when two people fight in a cage, and they apply not only when armies face each other, but they apply in areas of business and areas of politics and all of these things. These are root rules. So again, strategy is the destination and how we're going to get there. Tactics are the specific actions we'll take along the way. Right? Now, when I was fighting, my first fight was in 2007, and Mark Hominick and Sam Stout and Chris Hordesky were among my sort of coaches and sort of higher level than me, much higher level than me, training partners and stuff. And going into my second fight, we were getting ready, and Mark Hominick said, "So what's the game plan?" And I said, "Bro, we're going to keep it standing, and I'm going to touch this guy up. He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and I'm going to touch him up." He said, "No, what's the game plan?" I said, "Well, I want to keep it standing." He goes, "That's a dream. That's not a game plan." When in real life, when coaches and fighters and people are preparing, they don't say, "We got to get the takedown and then we're going to be good." Or "If we can get it to the ground, we'll win the fight." Or "If we can keep it standing, we will win the fight." Those aren't strategies. Those are dreams. Those are hopes. Those are things we would love to happen. We talk about them again in the language of sports television, sports broadcasting, but that's not real. Because why? So on the broad strokes, we know that, and when we say Jorge has precision striking, again, language of television, but Jorge, with the key difference with his striking is the experience, right? How many thousands of punches you throw smooths the grooves of your body that allows these things to happen. It also trains your mind to allow these things to happen more fluidly. But it's the thousands of rounds of fighting that changes what you see and how quickly your brain interprets it. So I'm going to touch on that for a second. Kamaru Usman is throwing a punch. or anyone. Jorge Masvidal doesn't go, I see he's using the left hand to try to set up his right to trap me into moving into his power side. None of that language is happening in his mind. That's the language of television. What's happening in his mind is an algorithmic sort of calculations that are being done by his brain automatically from the thousands and thousands of rounds and minutes of sparring, training, and fighting. What that does ultimately, at his best, is allows the more experienced fighter to see things more broadly, to react more quickly, understand the relationship of the space between my weapon and your target, your weapon and my target, and the placement of our feet. It also allows the speed at which I can see and interpret things. At the high level, a fighter like Jorge Masvidal, when he's on, I haven't even had a sip of my iced coffee. Cheers. Thanks for hanging with me. At the high levels, sorry, I got ice in there. You're going to hear that crunch now. That's very irritating. I apologize. At the high level, Jorge will actually see and experience the fight more slowly than Kamaru Usman or a less experienced fighter. That's not absolute. It's a nervous system training. Some people in 10,000 hours will achieve that rate of speed of interpretation and processing. Others could take 20,000. Others may never achieve it on the same level. There's a genetic component and a skill development component to how quickly you see these things and react to them. Again, bear in mind, under no circumstance, at no point in time, is the fighter saying, I see a jab, I must slip, I must answer. All of this is happening with the same rate that a fastball hitter hits a fastball by training his nervous system over time. We see this, can't hit shit. That guy literally is able to, his brain algorithmically, which is a term I just use for automatically, it's if this, then that. The brain just sees it, the brain identifies a certain movement, and then it can anticipate the position of the ball in space in context with the swing. How the fuck do these guys do that? Because thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of training literally changes their brain's ability to see the fastball. So if you think of it in that context, fastball hitter compared to you and I, that is what is happening for 25 minutes or less in 5-minute rounds as these fighters are happening. Their brains are making these calculations at high speeds. That's fucking mind-blowing, right? We don't, again, the language of sports broadcasting hasn't yet allowed us to get into this, so we misunderstand what is happening. But what is happening is these two highly trained nervous systems are lying to each other and misdirecting each other and playing these games to try to land these things. Now, at that high level, Jorge Masvidal has that kind of advantage in theory. How do you nullify such an advantage? Well, that advantage, which is neurological, which is trained, again, from thousands of hours of training. What the fuck? What do you think? Jorge Masvidal started fighting humans. This is not on his record, nor is it, he'll deny it, I'm sure, and he should. But at 15 and 16, he had real fights with grown men. He's now 39, I don't know, he's 36, I'm not sure. He's been doing this for a fuck of a long time. It changes your brain's ability to interpret what it sees. Kamaru Usman's been training at a high level. Henry Hooft is a genius. He's got great training partners. He will be advancing quickly, but there is a neurological difference for how they can process what is happening in the chaos of this. And this is what they're seeing. And moving, and their feet are moving, and they're both moving. It's fucking mind-blowing what's actually happening there. How do you nullify that? Where does that advantage lie? That advantage, as your brain is able to interpret something coming at you, something where it comes from, what it means from years of training it, that advantage is an advantage with time and space. We have space between us, and in fighting, time relative to speed, relative to speed is time. If I'm here, you have more time than if I'm here, right? It's a very simple concept, but the time the brain has to make these instantaneous calculations based on its lifetime of training is connected relative to the speed at which the weapon or the target is moving, is connected to space. That's a complicated way of saying, if I fucking grab you, grappling, trapping, wrestling, whatever term you want to use, if I get close to you, the space does not exist. Therefore, we've removed the time that your brain has to do it. Now we move into the advantages of Kamaru Usman. Now, There's a few things. I made a couple of notes here. Jorge advantages in the open space. So, and that's a term, something I remember talking about, at Fight Network, that Cub Swanson in space is able to do these things. I remember Brian Stan and I were doing something together. He's like, bro, I love that. Let me use that. And then he started using it, which is very cool. This is how language gets shared. He'll say something and I'll hear it. And this is how we share ideas. This is why podcasting is so interesting today, because it doesn't all have to be in the language of sports broadcasting, which is its own language, not necessarily based in the reality of what you watch in a football game or a fight, but it's based in getting you to engage, to speak, to compete with each other, to argue, to bet. We say, I think this guy's going to win. He's got better striking, going to keep it on the feet. If he does, he's going to light this guy up. Jorge Masvidal by finish in round 4. But then the other guy on the desk will say, Kamaru Usman's wrestling pedigree is too good. If he can take this man down, he's the bigger, stronger fighter with only 7 days to prepare. Jorge Masvidal on the bottom. Kamaru Usman finishes him round 3. That's not about truth. That's about getting you guys and all of us to argue on Twitter. That's why sports language happens that way. It's not about what's the most truth, how we can dig into the minutia, find the beauty. It's about how you can get the audience engaged in such a way that you sell more pay-per-views. That's why sports broadcasting has taken that shape. We are able to discuss things in another way. If you again, even fighters that are current broadcasters speak as broadcasters, but then in the gym they don't talk that way. It's a language created for a certain purpose. So the Jorge advantages are through experience. That experience is thousands more hours of doing a thing. When you do a thing for 16,000 more hours than somebody else, there's a very good likelihood that you have trained your body and your mind and your neurology to do that on a high level. Okay? So that's what experience is. Now, what is that thing when it comes to fighting? It isn't how well you throw your jab or how you regenerate power. That's another word we use like fucking crazy on television when, power is not even something you have. Nobody has power. Power is something you create. Power is created from the feet through technique. Somebody will say, well, God-given power, Conor McGregor was born with it. When Conor McGregor walked into the gym and threw punches, he didn't punch as hard as he punches now. Why is that? Through technique and understanding it, he learned the ability, he maximized his body's ability to create or capture or channel power from the ground. So we just do that. So Jorge's main ability is neurological advantages that have been created through training. How do you nullify those? Take away the space. How do you do that? Grapple, trap, etc. Of course, that's what Usman would like to do. Usman's advantages lie in his addition. And these advantages are not born in us. They don't just exist in us. They come as a result of, like all things in life, skill development. Skill development happens through hours of deliberate practice, getting feedback, and making improvements along the way. Usman's advantages happen those additional thousands of hours were him in a wrestling room against great wrestlers doing phenomenal things, engaged in just the grappling arts and the physicality that comes with it. Not only if you spend 20,000 hours wrestling in a variety of environments with a variety of fighters, do you become better at those things, your attributes build around it. Do anything long enough, not only do you learn to do the thing, but your body will get stronger. You play bass forever. You'll build a callus. We physically react to these skill development hours spent as well. So now, Jorge and Usman are not two things that have scores like Dungeons and Dragons or video games. We present them that way, but in fact, they are, on this night, the culmination of a lifetime of preparation for these moments. So that's fucking awesome. This is why I love fighting so fucking much. So we take those advantages. There's technical advantages. Jorge will move more slickly. He will be able to, manage the relationship between him and his opponent. He can lead his opponent into things, all of those technical advantages. Then there are the attribute advantages. His will be hand-eye coordination. His will be speed through which he sees and processes. Those are actual physical attributes that he will have advantages. Kamaru Usman will have different attribute advantages. He's got physical strength. He's got a leverage, using the physicality of his body for leverage and to confine somebody and to incarcerate them. That's a technical advantage. That's an attribute advantage. The size, the strength, which are not, he was not born with. It's not some weird thing. It's a result of hard work. It's a result of hard work. That's why Kamaru Usman's so fucking strong and fast and skilled. It's hard work. That's why all these guys are that. The cool thing about this, I may tangent for a moment, is we can all get good at shit. All we have to do is work really hard at it. Anything you deploy effort, anything you put intentional hours of skill development to, you will get good at. These guys are proof of that, as is every greatly talented athlete or artist or construction worker or policeman or doctor or whatever on earth, or people who make iced coffee. They are a result of hard work. And all of us can become anything we want with hard work, to a degree. You know, we have limitations, we're human. So now we want to talk about nullifying technical advantages and nullifying attribute advantages. And this is where real modern strategy comes in, okay? I know I took fucking 14 minutes to get here, but I hope it was interesting. This is my life's work, is exploring how real life, science, and emotion, and physics, and all of these things connect into combat. This is my life's work. I hope it's interesting to some degree, even when it takes me a long time to get there. So how do we nullify those things? That's where the strategy comes into. I talked to a coach today. I'm not going to say his name. He's coached plenty of UFC fights and cornered in a variety of ways. And we were discussing true modern strategy. Modern strategy, like I said, if you're just joining us, is not, I'm going to keep it standing. My coach gave me shit. He's like, that's a dream. That's not a strategy. That's something you know, that's a dream. Because fighting is what it is. You don't get to choose. We see this a lot too. People say, what did that guy do wrong in the game plan? I can get my ass kicked and do nothing wrong in the game plan because he has one too. And all he has to do is win some small battles where I'm making the right choice and he's making the right choice and he wins small battles. I can get knocked unconscious after getting shit kicked for 4.5 minutes and we go, that guy sucked. And all I did was do 2 or 3 small things wrong. Small things that we thought would be different. We underestimated, or he was significantly better tonight than we thought. That's the reality. Often you don't have to do anything wrong. But, so here's one, for example, a coach tonight, friend of mine, won't say his name because I didn't ask him permission to say it. He said, look, you know, take 10 coaches. They have a variety of levels of strategy and tactics that they will employ. And also it's related to how well the fighter interprets that and how much better they are at that. Mike Perry, his coach, his girlfriend, had 0. And that suits him just fine because those things actually do not benefit him at his present state. Of course, there's a lot of other Mike things, but Mike is a kind human being, and I bet he's going to be back and he's going to make some changes, and I bet his life is going to go this way. I really do. Mike Perry. And of course, I feel bad for anyone he hurt in the process, but we all make fucking curveballs in our life, and we do not need to judge each other by our worst moments. Because if you have a long life ahead of you, you can have a lot of great moments, do a lot of great for people. I digress. So different coaches will have different amounts of that. Some coaches who are, we're going to keep our feet moving. We're going to try to, we're going to prepare these very light game plans. They may suit our fighter. It may suit a guy who reacts very well and does best when he's in the flow and not overloaded with information. Other coaches are like, okay, round 1, we're looking to do this. If this works that way, keep this thing going. But if that starts to fail, we'll move to plan B. Now, if we're up a round, we're going to do this. And Faraz at times has been one of those coaches, Greg Jackson at times. And I'm talking about with high-level fighters. You look at a George St. Pierre fight, and you look at the coaching, it's like round 1, we're going to try to burn out his shoulders. Round 2, we're going to do this, because they had an athlete capable of that, and so they could do that. On Jorge, if one of these coaches... one of these very sort of, a lot of strategy, and again, more is not better. More strategy, more tactics, more game plan, more if this then that is not better. Because sometimes now we're stuck somewhere. Mark Henry is a very good friend of mine. I respect him, I love him, he's such a good guy. He had one night, and he coached his fucking brains out, and his fighters have had amazing performances, and they'll have more. But he'll talk openly about his worst night when Frankie fought Jose Aldo. And on that night, they had all these plans, and those plans revolved around Jose Aldo being Jose Aldo, who he'd been for 10 years. And on that night, Jose Aldo was a totally different dude. He backed up. Jose Aldo backed up and countered all night long. Jose Aldo, when we used to talk about Aldo in the early days, when we would make absolutes before we understood, me and Ramdeen and over at Fight Network 5 and 6 years ago, in early stages of analysis, this guy's this guy's excellent at this guy's the best this. All of that is television conjecture. That doesn't make sense because they're constantly changing. But we used to say, Jose Aldo and Renan Barão are the ultimate pressure fighters. They move forward behind their jab and their left hook with those heavy low kicks. And if they get their thing, and we used to get caught up in that. But of course, that's not true. On that night, Jose Aldo moved backwards, was counter-punching. You know, he had just been countered by Conor McGregor, and it changed the way he saw fight game. And Mark talked about that. He's like, I let my fighter down. We had all these plans and none of them took into account the change in our opponent, because all these guys change. Somebody says, this guy's got the greatest right hand in the game. He may choose not to throw it. Conor McGregor's got the baddest straight left hand in the game. Well, he used it to set up a head kick because you think it's all about his left hand. This is how they change. And Mark, again, I can't state this heavily enough. He is one of my favorite people, and I look up to him as a coach so much, and he's always been so kind to me and given me so much insight. I'm not saying anything he didn't say. Is on this night, I let my fighter down. Because as it all changed, Mark and Frankie had become so good at figuring it all out and employing it and having plans and making it all work, and they fucking gelled so well together. On a night where everything changed, it wasn't better to have all that. On that night, Frankie, let's go out there and feel this fight out. Let's make adjustments. Let's be adaptable in the moments. Let's flow. Let's try to enjoy ourselves. That was the answer that night, but it's not always. And that's one example of thousands, and every great coach has had these. Every great coach has had these. More strategy, more game plan, more concise is not better. And when something goes wrong, what was wrong with the game plan? Again, it's sports television language. That's not real. This isn't how they work. But having said that, depending on how much we want to use these aspects, my friend, the coach, was like, this might be one of those nights where if you've got Jorge, who is just maybe slightly compromised in his fitness level, Usman may gently anticipate a particular pace in rounds 1 and 2. If you're Jorge, you try to surprise him with that pace. Not all forward, but really push him, really amping it up, really taking those rounds at all costs with moving your feet and throwing more punches than would be expected by a guy showing up on a week's notice. Risky, yes. But not if you win those 2 rounds. And again, depending how much we work with strategy, if we win these rounds, we go that way. If we lose these rounds, we have to have an adjustment capable of being made. But if we do win those rounds, can be risky. What happens? Our opponent now has to be moving forward. If he doesn't move forward, we touch him up and we slow it down, we make it boring. And if he does move forward, we fuck this guy up. Now we have a predictable next few rounds. We've got an urgent moving forward guy, and we've got weapons strategized specifically for that. These are the things that happen. It isn't, I'm going to keep it standing, or let's go for the takedown, or let's try to push him up against the fence. Those are momentary things that happen dozens of times, or stopped and started again. Sometimes we'll see them, and after the fact, we'll say, this guy was trying this, and look, he tried to employ that. These things, sometimes the fight, as Eddie Alvarez said when he was fighting Dustin, he was like, I was just trying to make my way through the fight. Sometimes they surf the fight. They just experience the fight. They're in a swim. They're swimming in it. It's just what it is. And it is that flow and that freeness and that lack of overstructure that sometimes makes those fights so beautiful. But if you can make the man lose the first 2 rounds, you now have a predictable enemy, and a predictable enemy is very good. Now, if you're Kamaru Usman, of course, if we were to also bear in mind one other thing. Jorge, go back and watch all his fights. There's a lot of he grapples a lot, he wrestles a lot, he flows and swims, but he rarely surrenders a position. rarely surrenders a position, which means he's always still moving. Surrendering a position would be like, now you're in my guard. I have agreed, okay, I'm gonna stop with the whatever is happening and I'm going to settle into this spot. Now we will fight from this unofficially agreed position, where you're going to be in my guard and I will be fighting here. Or you keep battling with me, and instead of me continuing to flow and move and choose, I breathe out and I settle into a half guard, or I settle into over under, or I settle into, once you settle into a position, you have surrendered a position, which is a conscious decision. It's often a conscious decision because if I keep going, I will fatigue. It will get worse. I better stop here. You rarely see that from Jorge. He just doesn't do that a lot. He's continuing. He just never accepts the position. That's fucking fatiguing. If I'm Kamaru Usman, I like that he's like that because I'm in better shape than him. I'm stronger. I think I'm fitter. I have a better anaerobic capacity. I have a better ability to recover in sprint, recover scenarios. And I'm going to fucking push him. So what either of those two strategies, both of which are good, the difference again relies in, and we say this all the time. It's like, how's this guy's takedown defense? Again, that's the language of sports broadcasting. And I know that really great wrestlers like Dom and DC, who are geniuses and brilliant wrestlers and great at their jobs, say it. But they don't really say it when they're coaching or training. They only say it on television because takedown defense is not a thing. Wrestling is a thing. Wrestling with an objective is a thing. So I'm going to wrestle to stop you from taking me down. That is a thing, but it's a limiting thing. I'm going to wrestle to separate or reverse or get a dominant position or fatigue you. I have many objectives in a wrestling exchange, all of which are real, all of which are always there. And when we say takedown defense, we are dumbing it down because we think that's all the audience can handle, but we're wrong. You can handle more. The audience can handle more. Wrestlers, in the sport of wrestling, there is no such concept as takedown defense. For a wrestler to say, I better stop this single, he's done. The wrestler has to either reverse him, get a dominant position, hurt him, stress his body, whatever. There's 1,000 things you might do outside of defend the takedown. So it's a simplified concept that is only thrown out into the world because that's what we do on sports television. That's what we've always done. I don't believe we have to do that, but that's currently what we do. And that's okay. But that game, when we talk about it, really it begins out here. Let's say I'm Kamaru Usman. I want to be on top and I want to have you tired. And I want to hurt you. To do that, I have to fight until you surrender the position. To do that, I have to have created a scenario in which we are grappling with me on top, trying to push you to that. For that, I have to at least have started a takedown. To achieve that, I will have had to make some kind of grip on your body. To achieve that, I will have to have gotten through space to grab you. So it begins out here. And that's why the idea of takedown defense, defending the takedown, all of those things are so limiting of concepts because it's like running the football or the quarterback sneak or whatever. We always look for simple ways to do it in television because we think we treat people like they're dumb, and you're not dumb. You're not dumb. The game of TV has existed for a long time, assuming that we can't handle more information. And also that we will be a more engaged audience, they'll get what they want out of us if we debate things. Then we start to debate things that are not actually real, which of course is what's happening in news and politics too, but that's for another day. Anyways, all of this, as I said at the beginning, is not here for me to say, this guy's good at this, and if he gets that, he'll win. If this guy's good at this, it's like in truth, those things are isms for TV to get you creating debate on the internet and wherever, pre-internet, to get people in their living room debating and negotiating this with their friends. In truth, the fighting is complicated. It's so much more complicated and nuanced than we talk about. We improperly because of the people who give us television and give us commentary and give us these things, have mistakenly believed we can't handle more. We are limited with these talking points, but they are not the definition of everything. ultimately, a lot of fights like this. Oh, that was a key thing I was trying to get to. How do we nullify an attribute advantage and potentially both, also a technical advantage? The greatest way to do it is make you more tired than I. Make you more tired than I, right? That's one of the most powerful things in the fight game. Like, out of 100 fights, 58 of them, and I'm making up a number, could be 63, could be half, whatever, it's a lot, are what especially decisions, obviously. If you kicked me in the head and I'm unconscious, all this shit's irrelevant. And of course, that's your goal. And that would be great if you can do that. I mean, I don't want to get kicked in the head, but for you, that would be great. But ultimately, if fights go late, either finished late or to a decision, so many of them are won because of us manipulating each other's energy systems. Again, it's a limitation. Somebody said, are you a fighter or just a fan? I had 9 professional fights. I won this. It's a very low-level belt. It is a Canadian bantamweight title. I won it in a very small show in a very low-level fight. But yes, I was a fighter. I fought 9 times as a professional athlete and competed in all kinds of other martial arts. I've been training martial arts since I was 7 years old. I'm 50 now, which I think I look pretty good. Anyways. The main way that these things happen, the main equalizer and then advantage maker is if all else is equal, if I can make you tired, all is no longer equal. So in rounds 4 and 5, why do they call them the championship rounds? Well, they don't exist in non-championship fights, but also they're the deciders. Because let's say you do win round 1 and 2. Not only can I win the last 3, but I can push back and then finish you in round 4 or 5. Usman finished Colby Covington in the 5th round. He broke his jaw. That's an example of how the pace that he can handle, and that's a difficult one. That's probably the biggest variable of this fight. If anybody out there, and I love Jorge Masvidal, personally and as a martial artist, if anybody thinks Jorge Masvidal is going to win round 5, unless he is fucking badly injured, the other guy, I would be shocked. Doesn't mean he can't. I would be thrilled for him. I'd be delighted because we don't know what he's been doing. We don't know where his training is at. We don't know where his cardiovascular capacity, his anaerobic, his aerobic, his recovery. These are all separate things. Another thing, again, it's just by identifying the limitations of our language, we'll open up our minds a little bit more. We say this guy's got good cardio or bad cardio. Cardio is just a slang we use for about 10 different things. You know, how fast can you push? How fast can you recover? How hot can you burn? What's your aerobic capacity? What's your anaerobic capacity? There's multiple energy systems used in the game of fighting. Can I redline you? If I do, how well do you do when exhausted? When I create a hypoxic state in your body, are you able to work still? All of those things, we call it cardio. So it limits our ability to really understand what's happening here. But be shocked if Jorge Masvidal is pushing and fatiguing Usman. I would be shocked, but it can be done. He can also put him on the wrong end of things. The best scenario for Jorge, if it goes to the advantages and his attribute and his technical advantages, are he's frustrating Usman. I had another conversation. I talked about a coach that was talking about, if we're coaching Jorge, do we try to like redline this, make Usman behind a few so he comes forward so he becomes a predictable enemy? Now, he should be coming forward anyways, but Usman doesn't want to make a mistake of diving in on a takedown and failing and ending up with his heart rate high on the outside. We just don't want to do that. In the old days, we'd say, shoot, shoot, shoot. In the new days, you don't fucking dare to do that. You don't dare to do that. Not from the outside, not from where I can see you. You know, the highest level guys, Conor hit Eddie 3 times coming in the same sort of blast. And Eddie was having he was not on his best, although that's not a excuse. That's a compliment to his opponent, because it's the dynamic at play between the two individuals that creates that. It's rare that you're having an off night and I'm not having a great night. There's something in the dynamic of these two things that cause the difference to grow. But you don't shoot from the outside. You have to engage into some amount of grappling and then not rush it, see what you can learn. I would expect a patient Usman. And if Usman is not patient, it may be against his his better judgment. His heart rate is high, his cortisol levels are stress, the stress hormones are in his body, and it just, Joe Rogan something, people are sending me little notes, but some of them are meant to distract me, because distraction is also a key. If you're trying to wrestle me and I distract you, I make you hesitant, I make you, attention is a renewable resource, but it's a limited resource and it can be stolen. And that's a nice way to kind of wrap it up. And hey, have I given you any predictions? Absolutely not. Am I likely to ever in the future? Highly unlikely. The deeper you analyze these things in truth, and there's a lot of reasons you can analyze stuff, and no judgment on any of them. Sometimes it's for entertainment purposes. Sometimes it's to sell pay-per-views. Sometimes it's to create conflict. Sometimes it's because you love sports and the language of sports is what you grew up wanting to do. No judgment. But if we're looking at the truth of these things, the more you study, and you go through this path, you start out, you're like, hey, I'm going to study anything. This isn't just martial arts. I'm going to study this. I think I learned a lot. Right then is the day that you probably you just didn't yet realize how little you know. Because over time, I feel like I have shared a lot of information here, some of which people will find very interesting, much of which I've studied through. Sports psychology consultant, a friend of mine, a doctor, a PhD in psychology. I'm writing a book on combat sports with him over the last few years. Some I've learned from the cage, some I've learned from fight, striking coaches, wrestling coaches, jiu-jitsu tournaments, all these experiences. I've learned these things. They sound like a lot of interesting shit. What they've taught me is I don't know fuck all. And trust me, if I don't know fuck all about fighting, the thing I've studied closely my entire life, and I don't know fuck all about anything. I don't know about politics. I don't know about global warming. I don't know about science. I don't know about fucking COVID. So I'm learning to resist the temptation to draw a conclusion or to form an opinion or to deploy judgment on things as I learn how little I know. And the way I've learned how little I know is by learning this much and then realizing it's fucking nothing. So if people make predictions on television, more power to them. Some of them Chael Sonnen Chael's a genius, and his purpose is different than mine. He's not an obsessed martial arts nerd desperately spending the last years of his life trying to find the truth of some dumb little detail that he's obsessed with. That's me. Chael Sonnen fucking loves the art of entertainment. Chael Sonnen loves the art of provocation. He loves storytelling. He loves television. He loves all this kind of stuff. So when Chael says, I got a prediction for you, Jorge, this, he knows the chances are that he will be right 55% of the time, but when he's wrong, it will still create engagement, get people excited, get people talking, get people to his YouTube channel where he can share more information and have more fun. He knows that. Some of the people on television and the sports or wherever, they know that. They're like, hey, my job is here. My producer said make a prediction, so I make it. Others don't really care. It's not that big of a deal to them. But to me, the more you learn, the more there is, the more you realize how little we know. How little we know. And that's why I love it so much. I'm never going to know everything about fighting. I'm never going to know this much of everything about fighting. But I'm going to keep digging. I'm going to keep examining these things. And when you do, when somebody said Chael is wrong 95% of the time, no joke. If that's true, then he's doing it on purpose, because Chael's fucking smart. And he loves the game. He loves to entertain people. He loves to get people going. He loves it. Even just as a friend, when you're chatting with him, he loves to it's funny. And he sees joy in it, and he sees that it makes people happy. And it does. So, but the truth is, these are, and I'll kind of finish on this. It's called a chaotic system. And in fact, we start to realize, because of how quickly fighting changes, it's called a second order chaotic system, which means it's not just an unpredictable chaos, but the chaos changes simply by talking about it. And not just like anybody talking about it. If you say, Jorge does this, and this, and this, and the fighter or their coach or somebody watches it, that will affect their thinking. The thought process of the dynamic between the two athletes, the thought process of each, and the preparation and how they contextualize the fight affects the actual fight. The things you say actually can affect them. The things I'm just a little guy on the internet. I got 100,000 followers on Instagram. It's not very many people. But if I say something that has some, I talked about how Holly Holm would beat Ronda Rousey, not how would beat, but if you were going to win that fight, how you would do it. And like 2 weeks later, I saw Ronda Rousey saying on the Tonight Show, I know she thinks she's gonna keep me at distance, blah, 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 and then land a head kick. That was directly from my breakdown, which got 900,000 views in the 2 weeks before. Does that mean she saw it? Maybe not, but it was word for word. If that's so, I'm not saying I affected that fight, but every single thing said, that it is about thought, and thought is affected by many outside forces. What people say, how they hear about it, you all of a sudden hear, hey, wait, you got this much of the pay-per-view. That affects the chaotic system that is a fight. It does. Hey guys, just found out, there's 900,000 people watching on pay-per-view right now. That will affect you. That's called the second order chaotic system, where simply by talking about the chaotic system, it actually makes it even more chaotic and even more unpredictable. Do you guys think I'm crazy? Because this is all just what I do. And I'm really appreciative of all these people popping in and watching this stream. I know it's out of the ordinary. I know the way that I look at these things is a little bit different. My goal has been to learn this outside but deeply connected stuff, and try to find ways to communicate it in a way that a 10-year-old would understand. I don't know if I've achieved that yet, but I'm working on it. I just want to thank everybody who's on the stream today. I'm going to try to take a question or two. It's very, very small, my screen, so I don't know if I can read it. Ronda outboxed Betch Correa. That was a tough one. If you go back and watch that fight, Ronda got hit a bunch of times. That was a bad performance. Tough to say that when somebody won a fight in like a minute and a half. Same thing when Chris Weidman beat Vitor Belfort. That was a bad performance. He won, but it was a bad performance. Separate topic, but this is called resulting. If on Monday morning we see a thing and then we go in, and although we don't really understand it, because these things are very difficult to understand, even if you are one of the fighters or their coaches or were there or have 10 or 20 fights or studied martial arts your whole life, it's very difficult to understand in truth. But if we haven't done those things and we just like sports television and we just mimic the language of commentators and analysts and just change it up, we will do something called resulting. This guy lost, therefore this guy made a mistake. This guy won, therefore he had a good game plan. Those things are not true. You can have a very bad performance like Ronda Rousey versus Betch Correa or Chris Weidman versus Vitor Belfort and still win. You can have a wonderful performance and still lose. You can look phenomenal and something goes wrong and it's not your fault. It's one that people see a lot, Henry Corrales and Aaron Pico. If you're on YouTube, I might be on my YouTube channel here, or if you go on Twitter and you put in a 2-minute breakdown, Aaron Pico, you might find it. Aaron got knocked out in the middle of it. And I heard people were saying after, he should have gone for the takedown. Aaron made a mistake. That just because the consequences and the outcome were bad does not necessarily mean a mistake was made. I can do everything right, and this guy knocked me unconscious. I can do a lot of things wrong and still win a fight. Resulting is the act of saying, this happened, therefore these things went well. But that's so often not the case. And for the high-level fighter, for Jorge Masvidal on Monday. If you enjoyed this, please just look in the search bar of my YouTube channel, put in Robin Black, Jorge Masvidal brunch. Jorge and I had brunch together after he lost to Damian Maia, maybe 3 years ago. And, he lost that fight, and then we went up for brunch, which was very nice of him. There's also, before that, it's me and him in a shuttle together, and we're talking about it. So I sit down with Jorge Masvidal after that. The truth is, he did many things brilliantly. In fact, he fought Damian Maia as well as anybody could. Damian Maia had just made 1 or 2 key things, was able to get to the back and never get anywhere close to choking him. But that was enough to win. Did Jorge lose the fight? Yes. Did Jorge make some mistakes? Yes. Or maybe not. You can if I'm fighting Damian Maia, I can do everything right to the best of my ability, making smart decisions, and Damian Maia will still choke me out within seconds because I did what was right and what I was capable of and made the right choices, and he's just able to make my correct choices incorrect in the moment. So it's right for everybody else, it's wrong for Damian Maia. These are ideas for another day. I almost don't want to get off here. I'm enjoying this so much. People are being so encouraging to my different ideas and my different way of looking at this. I will be back. Please check my YouTube channel at about 8 p.m. today, the day of UFC 251. I'm sitting down with my friend David Mullins. David is a sports psychology consultant, and we're looking at the variables at play for this fight from a mental standpoint. So we're doing that in the next hour. It will be up here. Please follow me on Instagram at Robin Black Martial Arts. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of 1 and 2 minute breakdowns there. That'll give you an idea of some of my work if you haven't seen it. Thank you everybody for hanging out. Do we have any more questions? Fight companion, maybe. Connor has a better record than Masvidal. Great as always, salute from Tijuana. Cheers. Iced coffee to you. Do you think using the only grappling? See, I can't quite read these, so I'm just going to have to sign off. It's tough to sign off when you got a few hundred people hanging out, enjoying themselves and encouraging you, but we're going to do that. Please share this if you enjoyed it. Please send me something on Twitter at Robin Black MMA or on Instagram and tell me what you liked about this stream and what you didn't. Oh, I will be back 20 minutes after the main event. So, you know, hey, maybe just hit the notification thing, and 20 minutes after the main event, I will be live right here tonight. Thank you guys so much. It means a lot to me, really does. Enjoy the hostilities, my friends.